Rights are commonly defined as freedoms or privileges that individuals possess inherent to all human beings or as citizens of a society. These rights can be classified into sections known as civil, political, economic, and social rights. Most importantly, human rights are universal and apply to all individuals.
When breaking the law, hurting our society, and entering the prison system, individuals become prisoners or inmates. This process is known as incarceration and can lead to the loss of important rights, such as physical freedom. Inmates lose their right to vote and the right to privacy, and even some of their First Amendment rights with limited restriction of free speech in prison.
Historically, American prisons show the strength of their justice system and the effectiveness of their strategies, strongly highlighting the loss of rights among their inmates. A well-known prison that exemplifies the toughness of their penalties is Alcatraz, also known as The Rock. Alcatraz is an island off the San Francisco Bay, which became adapted and used as a prison of the Federal Bureau of Prisons in August 1934. Just as soon as one reaches the prison, a striking dialogue printed on the wall is something that shows the type of prison you have arrived at. Big and bold reads, "You are entitled to food, clothing, shelter, and medical attention. Anything else you get is a privilege."
Contrastingly, at the time, Alcatraz served as a model for the incarceration and treatment of hopeless criminals that did not have a chance to ever fix themselves without being given opportunities to. Examples of famously dangerous inmates include Al Capone, alias Scarface, a gangster heavily involved in gambling, alcohol, and drug distribution and prostitution.
The men out here were guaranteed basically four things. They were guaranteed food, shelter, and medical attention, and everything else was pretty much a privilege. So essentially, they had to earn their ability to do things aside from their basic kind of needs.
After 29 years, Alcatraz was shut down due to the need to change penitentiary policies. Their history itself demonstrates the ineffectiveness of maximum security institutions, which offered no rehabilitation for their
Alcatraz was all the men they felt had no chance of rehabilitation. These men were deemed to be incorrigible. They were sent to Alcatraz specifically because there was deemed to have little or no hope of actually reforming.
Although it is granted that a majority of these individuals have made irrevocable crimes that ended them up in the situation that they're at, however, no matter who the person is, there is a path of redemption and rehabilitation for prisoners who have landed themselves in these positions.
Through eras and numerous points in time, people have caused abhorrent crimes to end them up in the positions where they are in. As a result, they land up in prison and are forced to serve time. However, the way that prisons worked with prisoners and forms of living and rehabilitation varied across each prison. Another well-known correctional institution is the Texas State Penitentiary at Huntsville or Huntsville Unit, nicknamed Walls Unit, and is the oldest Texas state prison located in Huntsville, Texas. This prison, open since 1849, houses the execution chamber of the state of Texas, which is the most active execution chamber in the United States, with 591 executions since 1982. As tough as the Huntsville unit has been throughout the years, there have been many pioneers working to improve prison morale and maintain hope among inmates. Marshall Lee Simmons, the general manager of the prison system, implemented recreational programs to boost morale and garner favorable publicity. The Prison Tigers, a semi-pro baseball team, attracted a good crowd from the local community when they took on visiting teams. 30 Minutes Behind the Walls, a music and variety radio podcast with inmates as performers, became popular nationwide. Most famous of all was the Texas Prison Rodeo. From a humble start in 1931 until 1986, the event grew exponentially to a crowd of more than 100,000 fans to listen to famous musical acts and see inmates roping and riding.
Moreover, Marshall Simmons built modern dormitories, bridges, levees, and drainage ditches at state farms and oversaw the renovation of Huntsville, including the installation of modern plumbing and heat. Through the years, Huntsville wardens had assumed his sense of responsibility for the well-being of his prisoners.
So I think that was one, providing an environment of hope, establishing out with every inmate a relationship and letting them know my sincerity on hope. It was also very important for me to let that inmate and convince that inmate it was my responsibility to take care of his safety.
Only with rehabilitation and proper treatment of inmates from those who have control over them can they return back to society. Responsibilities are expectations of individuals as members of society. It is our duty to maintain order and justice through obeying the law. We can do these by participating in the functioning processes of the government, treating others respectfully, and making morally sound decisions that can help us commit more right actions and differentiate them
One
from
thing that
wrong
was a
ones.
constant, regardless of what that culture was creating and maintaining an atmosphere, which is probably the best way of providing a man hope. And the reason I say that is because anybody without hope can become a very dangerous person.
Our Constitution states that prison officials have a legal duty to refrain from using excessive force and to protect prisoners from assault by other prisoners. Moreover, the United Nations Human Rights Commission states that all prisoners shall be treated with respect due to their inherent dignity and values as human beings. The UN Human Rights Commission strongly recommends to respect inmates' religious beliefs and cultural precepts, and the retention of human rights and fundamental freedoms.
Today, the United States has the largest incarcerated population in the world, and although the United States only has 5% of the world's population, it has 25% of the world's inmates. In Texas alone, 120,000 people are incarcerated, 95% of whom will eventually be released back into their communities. Indeed, prisoners' freedom is not their right, but their rehabilitation is our responsibility. Rehabilitation efforts are currently underway and are multifaceted. Future efforts need to take place to foster the full developments of the human personality.
Aligning with prison system reforms, multiple programs are in place to focus on rehabilitation of inmates. A successful example is the Prison Entrepreneurship Program, known as PEP. PEP is one of the oldest, largest, and most comprehensive prison entrepreneurships in the U.S. and has been influential in forming and structuring similar programs across the country. This holistic program begins inside the prison and continues post-release. Inmates complete an entrepreneurship boot camp with access to mentored re-entry programs which focus on self-sufficiency and transforming broken lives.
I myself was incarcerated from 2018 to July of 2023. I did about 5 years, 9 months. I was a graduate of the Prison Entrepreneurship Program. I graduated of the class fall of 22. I myself was released to Houston to one of the 3 transitional houses that we had to offer. And I was on the ankle monitor as well. I've never lived a day in my life in Houston, Texas. I was employed by the organization about 60 days out of the penitentiary. I started as an entry-level case manager, and back in July of 2024, I've gotten now promoted to the reentry department manager. So I know firsthand both sides of the program.
Since 2004, the PEP gained 3,300 graduates. 100% of graduates are employed within 90 days of release and average 20 days from prison to paycheck. More than 500 businesses have been launched by PEP graduates, and nearly 100% of PEP graduates are still employed after 12 months, compared to a nearly 50% of natural unemployment rate among ex-prisoners.
That recidivism rate of 60% for an individual that has not gone through our program is 60%. When we graduate from the program on the inside, our recidivism rate goes down to 10%.
Conditions shall be created enabling prisoners to undertake meaningful remunerated employment which will facilitate their reintegration into society as a productive member to support themselves and their families.
It's much more than the business. It's like I said, it's the value, it's the hope, it's the sense of belonging, it's the community.
With the participation and help of the community and social institutions, and with due regard to the interests of victims, favorable conditions shall be created for the reintegration of the ex-prisoner into society under the best possible conditions.
Rehabilitate. You don't lock away. You don't put somebody and put them in the time out. You've got to have the understanding. You have to have the connection, the correction, and then the direction in which they should go next. Because if there is no connection, there is no communication, then you just doing the correcting. Well, there's 2 parts of that process that you're leaving out.
Ultimately, there should be hope for all.